Greetings, everyone. My name is Shariah Johnson, and I serve as co-chair for NADEC's Education and Outreach Committee. My other co-chair, Tom Dustman, who's not on camera with us today because this is an all-women's webinar. So we're happy that you are joining us for our webinar titled Opportunities and Challenges for Women in International Trade. For those of you that are unfamiliar, NADEC stands for the National Association of District Export Councils, and the goal of NADEC is to increase awareness and understanding the importance of exporting through education, through advocating and engagement. There are 62 local DECs that are backed by the U.S. Department of Commerce, and at present, Jonathan Sukes serves as the current NADEC president. And as we celebrate Women's History Month, NADEC is super excited today to bring to you this panel of awesome women who work in international trade.
My name is Ursula Wojciechowska, and I'm currently serving as the Communications Officer for the NADEC Network. As Shariah mentioned, there are 62 chapters in all. We're very excited about having all of you with us. We have brought together a panel of very successful women who are going to be sharing their life's journey experiences with us, the challenges as well as the successes. So I think with that, if I might, I've spent my life in the nonprofit sector, so I'm going to be, you're going to be hearing from me as I pose some questions, but I'm going to be very much in the background. So we're actually looking forward to hearing from all our panelists. I think with that, we will start off with the panelists. If you could, you all have between 5 minutes, if you could share with us a bird's eye view of who you are, what you do, how you got there, and share with us also one accomplishment that you're particularly proud of. That would be wonderful. I know we women are very bad at telling other people what we have accomplished, so it's going to be good for us to all hear how you've succeeded in what you're doing now. So with that, could I start off with Deborah?
Thank you. Thank everybody for being here. I'm Deborah Dudley, President and co-founder of Oscarware Inc. Can you all hear me okay? Is it coming through okay? My story is original. I wanted to be a country music singer, and I was singing on stage in West Virginia, and a man by the name of Reg Dudley was there visiting an old Marine he was in the Marines buddy, and he just saw me and said, I'm going to marry her. And that took me part of the way to where I'm at. We met, we married, and we started a business. And all because the house we rented didn't have a kitchen stove in it. We were in the backyard grilling everything. Problem was we couldn't grill everything we wanted. And him being such an inventive person, he decided he was going to put an expanded metal grate on our grill so we could grill vegetables, fajitas, pizza, whatever we wanted to do. And at that time, we did not know that product, that piece of expanded metal, was going to change our lives and outdoor grilling forever. Fast forward to today, we are the leading domestic manufacturer of a complete line of disposable and porcelain-coated steel grill toppers. Now, that sounds easy, but it wasn't, okay? That's the successful part. From that journey to today, you know, we started from scratch, and trying to tell someone in another country, much less in another state, in the late 80s, there was no internet, there was no fax machines, there was telephones. You got in your car. I was on QVC. I went around to stores. I did cooking demos, whatever it took to show people the product that we had and wanted them to buy. Fast forward today, I can tell anyone, anywhere, in any language about my product. And it changes daily. If I could have done what I did then now, you know, it would have been a lot easier. In 2006, my husband passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Now, he was part of the business. I was part of the business. I was very present in that business every day. It was ours. It was our baby. We started it. We were together every day. But there was a lot of things I didn't have to worry about. Maybe I thought, well, that's a man's thing, or I'll do the woman stuff. But I was smart. You know, I helped do product design. I did all the procurement. I did all the sales and marketing. And at times I was the very first person when we invented a new product through the manufacturing process that I wanted to make the very first one. So I knew the processes, but that wasn't a responsibility I had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Without him, I was very scared. Had a lot of people that didn't believe I could do it. So I had to surround myself with a new team, a positive team that believed in me and would help me do what needed to be done. That was hard, but that proves the determination it takes to be successful and to get through those times when you just don't see it coming. Something can happen and your life can change just in the snap of the finger. Today, we're a global company. Today, we export our products to 14 different countries. And this year, we made 1 million grill toppers that we exported to Asda in the United Kingdom, which is one of the top 4 retailers. And I can't wait to see what's next.
That's a wonderfully inspirational story. I think all of us salute you for that. I think you're quite right. There's not many women in manufacturing at the moment, Deborah. So we have a ton of questions to ask you in a little while. So with that, I'm going to pass on to Grace, who is in a more traditional role. Is that right?
Yes, I guess it's kind of a traditional role. Thank you for having me as a panelist, and thanks for everybody for attending. So my name is Grace Preston, and I am the International Sales Manager at Geophysical Survey Systems, or GSSI. We're located actually in Nashua, New Hampshire. We are a manufacturer of ground penetrating radar. It's radar that's actually used to map the subsurface. It's a highly technical field. So yeah, for me, it's interesting because most of the people I work with are men. So I've been in international trade, international business development for the core of my career, spanning back to a long time. I'll just leave it at that. So, and probably I'd say my biggest accomplishments are, really breaking into a field that's traditionally, or a role that's traditionally held by a man. So there's not a lot of women international sales or VPs of international sales that are out there in the field on planes, doing it day in and day out. So I feel really proud of my accomplishment of kind of holding this type of role and having this type of role for a really long time. And it hasn't been easy. I've had a lot of challenges. But, at the end of the day, I do it because I'm very passionate about international. And that passion has come through. I've been asked to testify in front of 2 U.S. Senate committees on the effects of exports on small businesses. So I've done that twice. Most recently, I think, was last year or the year before. And also I was awarded in 2023 Global Businesswoman of the Year by the New Hampshire World Affairs council. So really proud of those accomplishments. I don't rest on my laurels. Last week I was in Europe, and in 2 weeks I go to Peru and China and Saudi Arabia and UAE, and I probably some other places in between too. So so it is difficult, but I have gained a lot of support from the women within my community. Some of them I believe are on this call, so thank you, Michelle. I know you're out there, so thank you for all your help over the years. I really appreciate a lot of the women in my community when, you know, things are down and I need people to bounce things off of. My community of women have always been there to support me. So thank you.
Well, I wish you could. Can I come in your suitcase, please?
No, you don't want to. I keep, so last week, I will tell you this funny story before we get into the discussion. I took a trainer with me, a technical person with me, and he was male. And I'm like, dude, we got to get going here. Let's go. And he was like, I don't know how you do it. I brought him for 1 week and he was like, I don't know how you do it. I could have never navigated things the way that you have. And I'm like, yeah, got to get it done. I'm only here for a short amount of time. Got to get it done. Early mornings and late evenings, get up and do it all over again, and then fly home. So
we have a question for you about cultural differences and how do you deal with a male-orientated situation. So we'll hold that one. But just for our audience, I'm an Expedition Airways stewardess in the days when we had to retire your 35th birthday or 10 years of service. So I have been to the places you've been to, but many years ago. So if there is room for the suitcase, I definitely I'll take that space, I promise you. Jane, we're now going to call upon Jane. Jane and I used to work together in the British Consulate in Boston, so we both have some trade background, and I know Jane has gone into finance, which is critical, obviously. So Jane, over to you.
Thanks, Ursula. Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Jane Olahead. I am a banker for Capital One Bank. I started my career many years ago in banking in the UK. And then when I was 25, I went back to live in Saudi Arabia to work for Aramco, where I'd spent a lot of my youth. And met my husband there and came to the States. He became a student and I became a stay-at-home mom. And that was a big challenge because there was nobody here to help me. I had no support network and I had 3 children very quickly. And then I still couldn't work because of my visa stipulation. And so I volunteered, and it was through the volunteering, through the charitable British Charitable Society, that I ended up volunteering for the British consulate and eventually becoming an employee there. Worked for UKTI, I think it's now called Department for Trade and Investment. Yes. And that was one of the most rewarding positions I ever had because, you know, every day you were helping US firms actually, you know, go overseas, establish a presence in the UK and beyond. Or you had people coming from the UK and we were helping them navigate the New England market. It was very rewarding, you know, forging connections and, you know, making things happen for them. It's hard for me to pinpoint what might be the highlight of my career, but one thing I do remember was we had just heard the news about Fenway Sports Group buying Liverpool Football Club, and somebody had a bright idea to do a trade mission, piggybacking off this great news, but I had 3 weeks to do it. And I actually managed to pull off a trade mission of business people, academics, Boston Globe reporter, and our own press team. And we got it done. We got it done in three and a half weeks. And, you know, the connections that we made back then, this is over 10 years ago, are still thriving now, such as the power of making those global connections through the British government at that time. So I eventually had my own business for a little while, bringing European firms to the US. I also helped my husband establish his business here. And I gradually drifted back into banking when I had 2 kids in college and I had to step back into the corporate world. And I have been with Capital One now 6 years. I'm very happy here. So that's my story. That's my journey so far. Over to you, Ursula.
Paula?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ursula, and to the National Deck for inviting me today. Yeah, so my career, I've been involved in international trade for over 35 years. I started my career actually doing some of the same type of work Jane was just talking about. I worked for a private company that had contracts for foreign governments that didn't have a direct presence in the New England area. So they wouldn't have had a consulate and a trade team, and instead they hired our company to represent them both for foreign export promotion into the US as well as US recruitment of foreign direct investment from the US to go overseas. And really, I found it very interesting. We were doing a lot of work for the Irish government at the time, the Australian government, and some provincial governments. And I just really enjoyed the variety of working with different kinds of companies. Everything from, you know, a daffodil cooperative in Ireland to software out of Germany. It was very, very interesting. And really, I was able to roll my sleeves up, and I remember doing some crazy things like arranging for supermarket promotions, selling Irish oatmeal, and like we really got our hands dirty with that. So that was a lot of fun. And so a few years into that, I had an opportunity to work for the state at the time. We have our state trade office in Massachusetts, and they had entered into a collaboration with our Small Business Development Center, and they were looking to hire an international trade counselor, somebody who could counsel companies. At that time, our state had a very ambitious trade mission program. So there were a lot of, our governors were leading a lot of missions of companies overseas, but there was nobody available to actually help companies that needed support. And so they were looking to bring a person on board to do that work. So I was hired to do that, which even though I know it sounds like the opposite of what I was doing, it's actually the exact same work that I was doing. And it was great to be able to work on the ground locally with companies here in Massachusetts. And so I did that for a few years, and they came to recognize that they really needed to invest more in that effort. And so a few years later, we actually launched the Massachusetts Export Center as a full functioning center. So this year is actually our 30-year anniversary of the Export Center. And the type of work I do on the job is working mostly one-on-one with companies in Massachusetts to help them across all aspects of export development. So for companies that might be new to export, we might help them to determine if they're ready to export. We might be doing some sort of an export readiness assessment. Or one thing we tend to be doing a lot lately would be like a global market analysis. So say a company is interested in exporting, but they don't know where there might be strong markets for their product internationally. We can do an assessment to help guide them and help them to prioritize potential export markets. And then we also get involved with market development issues. So some of the things that Grace was talking about, for example, helping them to exhibit at trade shows internationally, find distributors internationally, sign on partners to help generate sales. And then we also get very heavily involved on the operational and global trade regulatory compliance side of things. We have a lot of companies in Massachusetts that are developing products and technologies that are controlled for export. So we have, they have some pretty complex trade compliance needs. And so over the years, our team has really developed a strong expertise in that area, and we do quite a bit of work in that area, doing export compliance risk assessments, helping companies to develop compliance programs, doing compliance analyses. So for example, just a couple days ago, I did a licensing analysis for a company that was dealing with controlled exports for the first time. So we do a lot of that kind of work as well. And then we do a lot of training programs and conferences on different aspects of exporting. We also started up a membership-based initiative called the Compliance Alliance about 15 years ago. And that serves as sort of like a self-help network of companies in the area of global trade compliance. And so, for example, one thing we're running through that in the coming couple of weeks is something called like a compliance clinic, where trade compliance people, or even people who just are not necessarily in trade compliance but work for companies that are exporting and have compliance concerns, can just join and support one another in the area of trade compliance. And then we also get very heavily involved with our state's STEP program as well. So we have a great team. I also, for many years, taught at BU. I had to give that up when my son came along. In terms of my biggest accomplishment, I really think, helping to build the Export Center from the ground up. We have a great team. I'm very fortunate to have great colleagues that I've worked with for a long time. We have a lot of longevity on our team, and just the recognition we've gotten through that. We through our Association of Small Business Development Centers, our center won the National Excellence and Innovation Award the first year that they had the award. So we beat out over 1,000 service centers across the country to win the national award for that. And we've also gotten the E award from the Commerce Department as well. So it's just been great working with our team and getting that recognition.
Well, I know, and I can speak for everybody that Paula does a magnificent job. So we thank you very much. And we understand there's similar offices around the country. Do you know where they are?
Yeah, they are. Well, Deborah mentioned that she works with my counterparts in Kentucky, which is great. And so not every state has a fully functioning center, but I do think for companies that are interested in expanding internationally, the small business development centers are a great first place, because some states will have centers like mine, but at a minimum, some states may just have a standalone counselor. At a minimum, they are trained to know what the resources are to help companies expand internationally. So even if they don't have a fully functioning international trade center, they will have people who know what the resources are and can at least connect companies with the right resources.
That's great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to ask one question to all of the panelists, and then you're going to be asked individual questions by Shorai and I in turn. So the general question for everybody: you work with lots of people in international trade in various capacities. In which positions and sectors are women well represented, and where do you see opportunities for women working in your field? So I'm going to start with you, Deborah. Manufacturing, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said before. I mean, I have a lot of women business organizations that I'm part of, and I hear all the different things that they do. And it's everywhere from, which is very important today, especially in exporting, is risk management. That is very important. And I have a really good friend that's a woman that can do that. And translations, if you're really looking to go global, you've got to be able to know their culture. You've got to know how to speak their language in the right way. Your marketing team. I have a great marketing team. It's women and men. I work with these people, and I don't see them as a woman or a man. I just see them for what they're good at. And those tools, those online tools, my legal team, protecting my brand, my trademarks, not just in the US, but in other countries. And I think we have done that in 9 countries now, because we know what countries we're in or where we want to go. I think all those are opportunities for women, as far as if they're looking to, get into that business. But I don't think you're limited. I think you can do anything you want. I didn't know I would be where I'm at today. Like I said before, I wanted to be a country music singer. Life tech, for some reason, this happened, and I believe I'm meant to be right where I want to be. And it's just wonderful to be able to share my story, and what works for me might not work for you, but you just have to figure it out, and you just have to love what you do, and you have to be determined to do it.
That's great advice. Jane, you are in the financial field. Do you think, what opportunities exist in that field?
I agree with Deborah in the fact that I don't think women are limited in what they can do. But I do think that it's the type of company that you get involved in that can help you expand your roles in international trade. You know, there are some companies out there that you know, I would imagine where the companies that excel in helping women get involved and expand their careers in international trade are the ones that offer, you know, flexible working arrangements, remote working, telecommuting, employer-sponsored affordable healthcare, things like that. You know, that will allow women to actually get involved in you know in the international global sphere, because there are certain companies that are limiting to women, and there are certain companies that are pretty robust and allow them to reach their potential.
Grace, any thoughts? You know, we touched upon the challenges you face as an international sales representative. How do you deal with the various challenges of being in certain cultures that may not be so pro-women orientated? And, you know, without stepping out of line, I'm thinking Middle East has always been a bit of a challenge. How do you deal in situations like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to voice what Jane and Deborah said. I think there are no limits to what women can do. You know, we may have to alter the way we do things, but I think there's no limits on what we can and can't do. So, or what we can do. You know, there are challenges culturally, and I kind of always approach the situation like, you know, other people may not believe in the same things that I believe in, but I have to respect their culture. So I always go into every situation with a very high degree of respect. In some areas, like in Jane, you know, having lived in the Middle East, I think, you know, like I don't take the lead on a lot of stuff. I kind of read the room and figure out, you know, if somebody doesn't put out their hand to shake my hand, I don't put my hand out. It's just a cultural thing. I don't take offense to it. And you know, you just kind of have to be a little less sensitive, and just kind of be more respectful. That's probably the best way I could put it.
Soraya and Paula, this question is for you both. You're both in trade compliance, and from my limited experience of that field, it seems to be very heavily dominated on the women's side. What are the key trends that you're seeing in compliance that we should be thinking about now? And what do you think specifically attracts women to the compliance field? And how can we raise appreciation of what you both do in this field?
Okay, I guess I can take it first, and then you, Paula, you just jump right in. I think for me, the top three, I think, trends that I've seen are the geopolitical events. So everything that's kind of happening, all the conflicts all over the world, always cause new risks, new issues for the trade industry and for corporations that are trying to move their goods, you know, cross borders. So that, to me, that's a really big one. Also, to the next one, I would say would be the rules around forced labor, and having supply chains that are free of forced labor. I think that's causing another level of degree of burden on companies, just to make sure that we have the right processes in place and that we are working with the right suppliers so that we can be compliant with those regulations around forced labor. And the third one for me, I would say, would be, well, so my technology failed me today with my internet, but advances in technology and AI in particular, I think that's opening up a whole new realm, I think, of to bring challenges for companies to figure out how to navigate, right? Like, how does AI fit here? What do we do with this? And how do we remain compliant while relying on tools that are being developed by AI. So for me, those are the top three, I think, trends for businesses today. And I guess for the second part, one reason why women are being attracted for me, and this is just my from my point of view, and I know you didn't get to hear my story at first, but I think there are opportunities that are being made available in this space, right? And opportunities for leadership positions, maybe not at a senior role, but at mid-level leadership. And I think the more and more opportunities that are available, the more and more the women are coming to claim these positions.
Paula?
Yeah, I think in terms of the trends that we're seeing a lot of the same as what Shariah had just mentioned. Specifically, some of the sectors that we have in Massachusetts have been impacted by a lot of changes lately. So we have a lot of companies in the semiconductor and advanced computing space, and they've been really impacted by some tightening export controls, specifically as it relates to China. And just in general, the controls on China and Russia and the increasing emphasis that they've had lately on anti-diversion as a result of that has also been a big issue we've seen with companies. And just in general, no matter what companies are exporting, just the general explosion in restricted parties that they've been adding, and the importance on screening and due diligence would be the main trends we've seen. And in terms of, yeah, for sure, I think out of, because of, I work in government, we work with companies, we work with folks like Grace, but we also work with folks like Shariah. And so I get to see a lot of different aspects of international trade. And without a doubt, I think trade compliance is the biggest area where I see women working. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I think in a very good way, the value that's been placed on trade compliance, I think is a lot better now than it was, say, like 10 or 20, certainly 20 years ago. And I think like a lot of the women I know, especially like the trade compliance veterans that I work with, those women, a lot of them started, I think it started because like a lot of times companies, if you looked 10 plus years ago, companies, they would be like, all right, we need someone to handle trade compliance. Like, and I think women are so good at being like utility players that a lot of the women I know that work in trade compliance sort of fell into it because of that, right?
And
so,
Paul, that's my story. I actually fell into trade compliance, and then I found out, oh, this is a thing, and I fell in love with it. So yeah, that's my story completely.
But unfortunately, I feel like a lot of women fell into it because companies didn't value it the way they should have, and they sort of just inherited it or took on the role. And the good news is, I think nowadays, companies are taking it a lot more seriously and do value it. And I do think, to be successful in the position, it also requires a lot of skills that women tend to be good at, like collaboration. You have to work with all the different departments of the company. You have to be diplomatic, because sometimes you have to be the person who says, wait a minute, hold on, when the salespeople want to run with something that maybe requires a little checking out. You have to be good at education. You have to get people on board and bring them up to speed on things, and you need attention to detail. So I think like a lot of the skills that are needed for a strong trade compliance director are inherently strong skills for women.
And Paula, we have this running joke with me and some of my sorority sisters: if you want something done well, call a woman. So I'll take the next question to give to Deborah. So Deborah, how do you find time to run your business and look for international customers? And how do you work in a traditionally male-oriented industry?
Well, fortunately for me, I have every opportunity to hire people who are team players, fill my team. It doesn't matter to me whether they're a woman or a man. I'm not, I'm looking for the right person for the job. Just like me, I don't want to drive a forklift. I probably could if I wanted to, but I'm good at other things. So that's where I'm coming from there. But as far as the time it takes, yeah, I wear a lot of hats here, and I'm pretty dressed up today. Normal days here, I'm in a t-shirt, jeans, tennis shoes, and I'm out there. And when I go through this white door and out the back door, I'm in my plant. We're manufacturing out there right now. I just like my pink office because it gives me somewhere else to be. But I have teams. I have the U.S. Commercial Service to do my market research. I have them connecting me with their international trade specialists in Mexico, in Canada, Australia, India. I mean, 35 years ago, it was impossible to send something to another country. I have a global marketing team. I have my e-commerce website. We just launched a year and a half ago, and we have been so busy putting together all the tools that we need in order to have all the online tools we need to expand our website presence in those countries that we want to go to. Wow, that sounds like a lot, and it does take a lot of time, but you have to do it right to be successful in it. And we're here in the USA right now. We've got great distribution. We've expanded our business, and we've stepped over that border. But I think the biggest opportunity for anyone today is to grow their business globally. There is all the things are in place for you to do that. And just like, again, call your small business development center. They know the resources. They know about the STEP grant. They know these services are free, people. I mean, they don't cost anything, and they want you to export. They want you to grow. They want you to start a business. It's not that hard to just make that call and get these people working for you so you can do what you need to do today, because they're great at it, and they're going to do it for you.
That's so good to hear. Jane, I have a question for you. I keep on hearing that women are finding challenges in getting funding, whether starting new businesses or trying to expand businesses, and also in attracting investors. Do you have any tips for these women, and where can they get access to funding from the private sector?
Yeah, so access to funding in many parts of the world is quite challenging, and it directly impacts the ability to start or expand a business. And the traditional route is perhaps to go to a bank and take on debt. For example, a working line of credit for working capital, or to finance startup costs, things like that. Some banks out there have incredible incentive programs designed for women-owned businesses. And I'm particularly fond of the SBA programs. We as a bank are a preferred SBA lender. In terms of getting money from a bank, you have to have a very good credit history. And, that means, you've got to make sure you pay your credit cards on time. You settle any outstanding bills, medical bills, student debt, things like that. You've got to have a pristine credit history to get a loan from a bank these days. So, what if you don't have that and you're just starting out? Well, you've got some options. You can go to perhaps venture capitalists. You can go to angel investors, or you can do, a friends and family round of funding to get you started. And my advice is these are all great avenues. You've got to remember that if you do take money from an investor, they usually will expect a part of your business. They'll expect you to part with some of your equity in turn for getting money. If you take money from a relative, you should keep really immaculate financial records of it, because at some point you may be able to refinance that private note with a more traditional payment from a bank. So that's one or two ways. There's also crowdsourcing you can do, and I can put some links in the chat in a minute. You can go out to GoFundMe or things like that. I can't remember, Kickstarter, places like that, if you're trying to raise some money. And, you know, I encourage, you know, people to get involved in industry, industry publications, because oftentimes you might find sort of private investors or industry investors that are very willing to look at what you want to do, but also make sure, and I'm not a lawyer, but make sure, you know, you have some kind of IP protection if you are starting out in business. You know, consult with some lawyers, consult with your SBA professionals, and they'll give you some advice on starting out.
Thank you. Soraya?
So,
Oh. Okay, all right. Soraya's having challenges again.
so I have
Okay.
a question for you, Grace. So do you find, oh, can you hear me? I don't know. Can you hear me now?
You're breaking up.
Okay, see, technology is okay.
Well, let me do
A question
it.
for you, Grace, if you can hear me. Yes, could you? Yes, please, Ursula.
All right, I'll do it. So this is for you, Grace. Do you find an advantage of being a woman in working internationally? Tips for dealing with international customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are advantages. I think women just inherently have a way of sometimes softening things, and you know, in a business environment, I think people tend to be a little more open with women than they might be with men. Certainly in the negotiating area. You know, but we also have the ability to come down hard when we need to. So we've kind of got like both ability to do that. I think just kind of going into meetings initially, I think particularly in the industry that I'm in right now, which is male dominated, I think people tend to be a little more open with me initially. And then as you know, it's easier to build a relationship that way as well. As far as tips for international customers, you know, I always just say be yourself. You know, people internationally want to build a relationship. It's not about really what your product can do or how much money they're going to make. I mean, that is a big factor in it, but I think there's a big emphasis on building the relationship. So if you are really genuine, if you're yourself and people get to know you and get to like you, you know, you're building a long-term relationship. You're not looking for a short-term sale. So you have to be in it for the long term.
Jane, could you expand a little bit about working with international business associations? And you and I are, Jane and I are in a newly formed group called the Women in World Trade New England. So Jane, if you can expand a little bit about working with associations, that would be great.
Yes, thank you for mentioning it. So I think, you know, if you're wanting to get involved in a career in international trade, one of the best things to do is, you know, reach out, network. Networking is great. You'll find mentors, you'll find entrepreneurs with experience. And if I can give a plug for Women in World Trade, this is a great organization, women-led, but not necessarily all for women. But its you know, mission is to support, encourage and inform women who are or would aspire to be in global trade. And I'll put that link, I'm getting around to putting all the links in the chat in a second. If I could expand on, you know, careers in international trade, you know, oftentimes you will come into, I stumbled into it, but, you know, a lot of people go into international trade because they've probably taken a degree in econ or finance or global supply chain management, but it doesn't have to start and end there. And I think, you know, with the advent of and proliferation of all these online courses, you know, there's definitely, you know, you can start a career later in life in international trade if you know, look at the online courses. Perhaps subscribe, like I say, to these industry-specific publications, just to keep aware, keep abreast of trends, and you know, volunteer. If you know, volunteer or take an internship or start an entry-level position in an international business or operation, and once you're in there, really, you know, get to grips with, find out what you really like about the global trade, and see where that might lead you.
I agree. And if you look into your local areas, there's usually so many associations that you can join or volunteer in. And if there isn't, start your own. Jade and I did, and it's really taken off. So it's a matter of taking the bull by the horns. You know, we can do it, as they say. So it's just a matter of having the power and the courage to go out there. So with that, I'm going to go back to Grace. With all your traveling, which I'm so very envious of, how do you balance your work and how do you balance your work and your life, and how do you deal with those early morning and late nights and have a life? Because very often women try to do everything. We try to be everything to everybody, right? And we sometimes wear ourselves out. So, any thoughts on that?
I'm not really great at it. I will be the first one to admit it. I try to eat well, balancing things and all that. Try to eat well, try to get some daily exercise, I feel really grounded being outside in nature. So I try to be out in nature as much as possible. The first thing I do when I come back from a trip, I was in Bucharest last week, and the first thing I wanted to do was go for a hike and be in the woods and be by myself and not talk to anybody. So, there is a sacrifice with all the travel and moving around quite a bit. But I try to take little moments for myself, whether it's just having some downtime to read a book or just not to talk to somebody for an hour or so. So that's my way I balance it. I think everybody has to find their own way, but I would definitely stress, eating well, getting good rest when you can. Yeah, I think that's probably my tips. I'm not great at it. I really try, and it is hard. It's very, very hard. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
It's basically you've answered. It's about how you do the early mornings and late nights and jet lag. I mean,
Yeah.
you are going from Europe time zone to the Middle East and Far East.
So the early, if I have an early morning call or a late night call, I do try to take some time in the middle of the day to go for a walk or do something just to break it up, because it does make for a long day if you're in the office all day. If you do call at home before you come into the office, and then you're in the office all day, and then you may have a call at night. So I do try to find some time in the middle of the day to just kind of break away from work or break away from the computer screens so that I just don't feel so overwhelmed.
Okay, Paula, question for you. What type of funding, government, well, we've spoken about the support that your office and similar offices provide, but can you tell us a little bit about government funding that's available out there, and perhaps touch on Exim Bank as well?
Sure. So, yeah, the great thing, and I think Deborah mentioned this as well, there's just a whole range of government support that's available to help businesses expand internationally. So some of it is financial, and some of it is market development, and some of it is technical assistance. And so I talked a lot about what the small business development centers can do. I didn't really talk about the Commerce Department, but I do really want to talk about them as well. So the U.S. Department of Commerce Commercial Service has a whole range of services to connect companies to opportunities internationally. They have staff on the ground here in the U.S. In every state. And we have a great team that we work very closely with in Boston. And then they also, through our U.S. Embassy and Consular Network internationally, have people on the ground overseas that can facilitate introductions to customers, distributors, partners. They can help to facilitate international trade show exhibitions. They can do due diligence on potential partners and customers overseas. So they really have a lot of services that they can offer for companies expanding internationally. And then on the finance side of things as well, Jane had talked a lot about like some of the startup financing and for businesses, but there are some dedicated export finance programs available as well. So if companies need working capital, so say you have an order for an export sale and you need working capital in order to fulfill that, both the U.S. Small Business Administration and the Export-Import Bank of the U.S. have guarantee programs where you would still work through your bank to facilitate the loan. But what those government programs will do is they'll provide a guarantee to the bank, because banks don't always like to take on that extra credit risk that is associated with export sales. And so what this does is it encourages banks and makes it less risky for the bank to lend against export sales. So those are great programs. And Ex-Im Bank also has some export credit insurance programs as well. So in fact, I literally just was helping a company with this today. So we have a company that we're helping, and they're exporting to Europe. And up until recently, they have been having to ask for cash up front for all of their export sales because they're not comfortable with the credit risk. And they want to expand their sales, but it's kind of hard to expand your sales when you're asking everybody to pay up front. And so what this credit insurance program does is it's an insurance policy you can take out on your sales. It's government backed through Ex-Im Bank. And it allows you to offer open account terms to your customers overseas. And if something happens where your customer doesn't pay, then you can you can file a claim just like you would on any insurance policy. So there are great programs in that sense. And then I also want to give a plug for STEP. So STEP is a grant program. We help to run the program in Massachusetts with our partners at the Mass Office of International Trade and Investment. Just about every state, I don't want to say every state, but most states run a STEP program. It's funded federally through the Small Business Administration, and then the states are also required to kick in a match. And what it does is it provides funding for dedicated international business development activities. It looks different from state to state. So each state is sort of able to write its own rules. So in Massachusetts, we have grants up to $15,000 per company. Companies submit an application and a proposal. A lot of companies use it to exhibit at international trade shows, but there are other eligible costs like trade missions, or if a company needs a product tested to comply with a foreign standard, or even some of those Commerce Department services I talked about for matchmaking, they call their Gold Key service. It can help to offset some of those costs as well, or even globalizing your website. There's a laundry list of activities that are eligible under STEP.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, so I'm going to ask one question for everybody, please, and just quickly to wrap it all up. We've thrown a lot of information at you all, so I hope that you are following all the various links in chat. At the very top of the chat is a link to an article that's been produced by 2 women professors at MIT about women reclaiming their power. So if you have time, I would suggest that you actually copy and paste that link, and at your leisure, you actually read the article. It's very empowering. And they are also offering a course on this at MIT, but we're not following about the course. We want you to read the article because it actually tells us what we've been listening. Deborah has said, and Grace has stressed, and so has Jade and Paula, that we can do anything we want. We just need to feel that we can do it. So what we want you to take out of this webinar is the fact that we are strong, we are powerful, and we are there to support each other, and we can do whatever we want to do. So with that, I'm just going to close and say one last round of questions for all the panelists, and that is, what inspires you, in 2 words, what inspires you to continue to do the work that you do day in, day out? I'm going to start with Jane.
Can you repeat the question? I was reading something on the chat.
Oh, well, you're following the rules. Good girl. Thank you. What inspires you to continue to get up each morning and do the work that you do?
Oh, gosh. I just like helping people. I especially like helping women. I just like that the community. I like being able to give somebody money. I think that's it, giving some advice and putting money in their hands. That's basically what drives me these days.
So basically you like empowering people, because money very often empowers people to follow their dreams.
Yeah, it empowers them, but it lets them fulfill their dreams. And I think, if you've got somebody who you can trust and somebody who knows you know, has a bit of business background behind them, has, for me, you know, because I've had a business and I've helped start a business and I've actually sold a business, it gives me credence with other business owners that, you know, this is what is lacking, this is how we can get there. And I get a lot of pleasure out of being able to make that happen.
Right, Grace.
I continue to do what I do because it's never boring. And to me, boredom is like the big evil. So every day when I finish my day, the next day it's going to be completely different from today. And so it's constantly challenging. I love the challenge of it, and I love the fact that it's just different from day to day, and I never know what to expect.
Sounds wonderful. Deborah.
Well, first of all, I have to, because I have employees that depend on me. And if I'm not here, you know, I feel like I need to be here. So that's just my opinion. But there is so many things I want to do. I mean, there is so many opportunities, and I can't tell you how I wish I could run, because this global e-commerce world we live in today is here in the US is only 5% of the world's population, and that's 400 million people. The rest of the almost 8 billion people are everywhere else. And I have been working so hard to get all these tools in place to go here or there, and I have the resources. So I can't wait to get started every day. I think that you just have to reinvent your business if you're getting bored, and just find another way to make it interesting. I love what I do, and that's why I do it.
It's infectious. So I think you are a wonderful role model. All of our panelists are a wonderful model for all of us. So Paula and who do we, and Shariah. So Paula, to you.
Yeah, I think the couple of things that inspire me, you know, one would be my colleagues. We have a great team and a great community of partners that we work with in Massachusetts. And then the other thing would be the clients and the companies that we're working with. I get to work with all sorts of fascinating businesses that are developing all sorts of interesting, amazing products and technologies. And you know, as Grace was talking about how it's never the same thing, you know, I'm always dealing with different companies, I'm dealing with different people, I'm helping them to export to different countries. I'm always learning something new, because there's always some random country in the Middle East that wants some obscure paper work, and you know, so there's always something new every single day, and so it just makes it really interesting. And then, you know, I think being able to see the successes of the companies that we help, and even helping people individually, even in their careers and things like that, it's just really rewarding.
Awesome. So Shariah, I know your internet isn't behaving.
Yes, if you can hear me, I'm not even sure these days. But I think your question was what inspires you or what motivates you. I think I missed the
yeah
question.
Yes, what inspires you? What motivates you to get up each day?
You know what? So my son actually motivates me to get up each day. I think I want to be the best role model for him and the best support system for him. And in that, in my thinking, in my drive, that's what makes me get up to do this every day. And then also, I get to meet awesome women like you all. So that's an inspiration for me. I think I dropped it in the chat because I couldn't say it earlier. But every time that I have the opportunity to meet a woman that is doing what you all are doing and you're doing it well, it inspires me, it motivates me, and it energizes me. So I'm just excited to be working in this field and excited to get to connect with women like you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So with that, I'm going to say a big thank you to all our panelists. I hope you found this conversation as inspiring as I have. And to remind you all that NAIDEC is doing its annual conference, which is our 50th conference. It's a celebration of the 50th year of the setup of NAIDEX around the country. And the conference will be taking place on May the 13th and 14th. I do hope that some of you will be able to make it to Washington. I think you'll find it inspiring. You'll be meeting very inspirational people who work all over the world. So we hope to see you there. So thank you for being with us. And if you could, Heidi, if you could just put up the slide again with all the resources we've collected, that would be wonderful. And Heidi is asking all of you to fill in the survey that she has put a link to, I think, in the chat box. So with that, Heidi, thank you for facilitating. Thank you all for your time. And thank you our audience for being with us. We very much look forward to seeing you again soon.